I have such a treat for you today. I'm sharing a conversation with my friend Jenn Cohen. She is the queen of energetic boundaries. By title, she's an intuitive consultant and she helps us really reconnect to ourselves, pay attention to our senses, including the sort of intangible senses that we all have that help us interpret the world and navigate it, even as it gets more and more complex. Honestly, what she shared in this process blew me away. And I think you're going to get so much wisdom out of this conversation. If you're like me and you get the concept of boundaries, but when they're tested, it gets tricky, you're going to love what Jenn shares with us. It really makes it so practical. And she talks even about this kind of self care that we can do in the process. Game changer. So I can't wait to share it with you. Come on in. So, Jenn, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I've already kind of explained to everyone a little bit about who you are and what you do, but I wanted to unpack it with you because I'm sure there are a lot of misunderstandings that people may have about what an intuitive consultant does and what that means. And you had actually led me through a session a few weeks ago. It was nothing like I'd imagined. And I don't even know what I was expecting. But what struck me the most was you used words that I would use. Like you used examples. Like I could not believe how quickly you really did dial in that intuition. And I had narrowed my view significantly on some things. And you just kind of opened it back up in the most graceful way. But as far as like exactly like how it all happened, I'm like at magic question mark. And so I'd love if you could just share a little bit about what you do and how you interact with people and that amazing gift that you bring.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it's really good to be here. I could talk about this stuff all day long. So thank you for your willingness and openness and for anybody listening. First of all, if you are listening and watching right now, that's no mistake. So I'll just put that out there. And as far as what I do, in a nutshell, if I was going to give an elevator pitch, I'm an intuitive consultant and I help people and companies in various industries get clear on their intuition. And what that looks like really is custom to each person that I work with and each company that I work with, and where they are in their level of understanding their intuitive abilities, understanding that they have intuition, and understanding, getting clear on where they would like some guidance and support.
Do you ever encounter skepticism from people who just don't quite grasp the purpose of intuition or how available it is to all of us?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And not so much clients. Once they've come to me, they're very open. They're very open, and that's by design. That's really I'm not really interested in skepticism and in people saying, "Well, prove to me that I have intuition." I can guide people into creating more awareness of their intuition, but it is my belief, and it's widely known that we all have this sixth sense. And when I say sixth sense, that can conjure up a movie. I see dead people. It can conjure up very different ideas of how socially we have been led to think what our sixth sense is. And how I see it is our sixth sense is just like any other sense that we have, except it's not something that has been taught to us, from a young age. It's not something that we can tangibly point to on our face or, say, smell comes from my nose. I can see with my eyes. An intuitive sense is a higher kind of vibration that we're talking, that we're tapping into. So if people are skeptical about it, I wish them well, and I say, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm here. But I'm really a true believer that we all have intuition, and we're just at different levels of accepting it, our awareness of it, and how much we want to incorporate it into our other senses to guide us through.
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say that you have some of the best energetic boundaries I've ever seen. Like, I just want to learn from you on how to hold those energetic boundaries of like, if you're interested, you are so welcome. If it's not for you right now, no problem. I'm not going to take that on. But I think in general, we're so disconnected from all our senses. And so the idea of a sense that you can't even explain in any sort of concrete terms, it's just like tap out, can't do it. But I am noticing more and more as the world gets more complex, and even as data is harder and harder to trust, it's
Mhm.
gotten really muddied and it just doesn't feel as clear as maybe it used to, that there's going to be a little bit of this shift to like reconnecting with those more internal senses that we have about this is something I should follow, or this is something I really need to protect myself from, or all these different things. And I'm curious if someone is listening to this and this is sort of a new idea for them, how would you suggest they listen to us talk about this and engage with it and kind of feel out what resonates with them and what maybe just isn't for them right now? Maybe they'll come back to it later, but so they know where they should put their energy right now as they begin to engage with these topics.
First, if you're watching this right now, there's an absolute reason that you're here and that you're watching this. There is some level of you that has interest in this. There is some level of you that knows that you have this ability, that this sense, and that you want to learn more about it and you want to make it more available to your psyche, to your brain. And how you can start to tap into this is intuition can only live in the present moment. So if you're thinking about something in the past or ruminating on something, you've left your intuitive sense. If you're worrying about something in the future, you have bypassed your intuitive sense. So coming back to the moment that you're in right now, saying, here I am, I'm watching this, I'm listening to these words. Okay, my intuition is primed and ready. And if I hear something that resonates with me, it's not actually going to come in really through the brain. It's going to come in through my body. I'm going to kind of feel something. When Jen Rebecca says something, it's going to light me up in a way. And that can either be really expansive and positive, or it could be like, ooh, I'm not sure about that, and kind of contracting. And those are both totally fine. Totally fine. It's information that you're getting that you can say, oh, okay, this is different. This is something that I can get curious about. It's not shutting it out. It's just saying, that's interesting. That's curious. Let me just either sit in this a little bit longer, see where this conversation is going to go. Or again, if you're just wide open, you're like, more, 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 here we go. We're going to dive in.
Here we go.
Yeah.
I love that intuition can only live in the present. Like there's so much invitation there. You kind of already touched on this, but maybe if we could go a little bit deeper, this idea that intuition lives in our body. Part of what we're exploring today is this idea of returning to self. We've sort of been pulled in all these different directions, and this is sort of a call to just kind of come back in, come back to yourself, reconnect with yourself. And so, what are maybe some exercises people can try or ways that they can start to understand their bodies? Like, our bodies are trying to speak to us. We're just not necessarily so good at listening. And what are some ways we can get better at listening to our bodies?
So, one analogy that I kind of love to use is your intuition is like if you've had a car for a little bit, and all of a sudden one day you find this feature that's in your car, and you're like, I never knew that that was there. Oh my God, this makes life a little bit easier. Oh, whether it be seat warmers or whatever, but like it's something that can enhance your experience in your car. That's kind of what intuition is. It's been here all along with you. It's been built into your vehicle. And it's when you can get curious and focus your intention and attention on that, then you can start to utilize that. So the first step in accessing your intuitive sense is to notice if you're getting frustrated or you're anxious or there's a feeling that something's off, and it can be at work, it can be with family members, it can be with friends, it can be with your own thoughts, because those two can just take over our experience at any time. And the first thing that I do is just to pause and get out of that moment. And how you can do that is you can take a walk, you can get outside really quickly, you can go get a drink of water, you can take a shower, you can splash some water on your face, you can go to a window and look out. It's really just saying, okay, let me ground into this moment, that I can go in and see that what I'm experiencing externally is actually not what needs to be my reality. And so when we do that, one of the tools that we can also do is, once we have put a pause, removed ourselves from that situation, what I like to do then is I like to focus and just name kind of three things around me. And it can be, okay, I'm looking at the clear glass of a window. I'm looking at the texture and the wood of my floor. I'm looking at the texture of some flowers over there. And that grounds us back into the present moment. And so it's like, oh, okay, we can almost feel our shoulders go down. We can start to feel that expansiveness in our chest, and much less of a constriction of, oh, what's going on? What do I have to protect myself against? It's getting out of this fear state, and it's really allowing ourselves to know, I'm not in danger. I'm right here, and everything that I'm experiencing comes from within. And how I'm going to interpret something is going to come from my intuitive self. It's going to come from my body understanding now, with maybe some deep breaths, that it's safe, that it's not in peril. There's not a big lion coming to, like, attack me, that I'm very much in control of the situation. And again, if you're not, you'll know. If you're about to be hit by a car, this doesn't apply. And then what I do is I really, really check back into my body, like I said, and there's more of an expansiveness there. And then I can start to see, oh, you know what? My stomach is really, it's upset right now. Okay, let me go to this area and just kind of focus and breathe into that right now. Those are just real easy, three simple tools. You have an exit strategy. Just remove yourself from the situation, even if it's a walk to the restroom and then excusing yourself and then coming back. You can just kind of name three things. I'm grounded, deep breath, understand that your body needs your attention, needs you to know, needs you to tell it it's okay. And then we are in our intuitive space, in our presence.
That idea of perception and how much it shapes our reality, that's so huge. And I feel like there's a little bit of complexity here. There can be some complexity around tapping into ourself and doing that kind of work to make ourselves feel safe, because we're bombarded, we're overstimulated all the time with news happening elsewhere, and there are terrible things happening in the world. And I think sometimes we take all of that on ourselves way beyond what we can actually act on. And sometimes even we feel paralyzed when we actually could take some action. We have more of an ability to take action to solve the situation than the person facing the danger.
Mhm.
And we're paralyzed because we're feeling unsafe, even though technically we're safe. And I'm just sort of wondering, like, what your perspective is on how do we find kind of a right relationship with reality such as it is, to be able to care but have those energetic boundaries where we're not taking on danger all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a great question, and I've actually been talking with a lot of people about this, where here's just a really, simple example, is if someone's coming to me with anger, I can meet them with anger, and then what does that do? We just exude more anger and hate, and we just add to the vibration of hate and anger, and that ripples out. When I shut down, my phone or laptop with that person, I'm angry. When I can come into it with, here's how I have, in my sovereign self, decided to work with this energy that is around me. I'm working on transmuting this energy through me. I'm working to take in the pain of others, but not in a way that when I take it in, I'm acting in that same pain. I'm taking it in and I'm allowing it to transmute in a way that I understand how they feel. And I understand that what I'm going to match their energy or come back to their energy with is a much more loving vibration. And I see it as anger, fear, love. And when we can get to that love, because I think people are angry because they're scared, they're fearful. And again, there's a lot when you're watching the news and when you're getting bombarded with all of this information. There's a lot that our mind can go to. And when I come back to the present and I can begin to come with a much more calm understanding of this person's anger and of where we're headed in their mind, we can come to a place of focusing on the now that is going to impact the future. So rather than jumping to the future and that fear, it's moving to that future with a much more loving vibration within ourself, that when we talk with others, that's what moves us forward rather than meeting anger with anger.
It's almost like turning on the light. Like if it's dark and you're upset that it's dark, bathing in that anger and hatred is sort of like piling blankets on top of you and it's just getting darker and darker. And when you can come back with love, it's like turning on the light. And that light is going to keep traveling until it hits a barrier.
And it's not always easy. It's
No.
not always easy. That's the practice. And that is,
Mhm.
it's not a light switch. It's a practice. And when you are able to know it's almost like your resting heartbeat, when you know your integrity, when you are in integrity, that's kind of your neutral zone that you always want to just come back to. And sometimes it may take months, it may take years, it may take days, but as you practice, it starts to be so uncomfortable when you're not in that neutral space. It can take seconds. And it's just like anything else. It's that practice, 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 and then the practice becomes easier.
It's so good. Like, y'all, do you see it, what I mean? Like the queen of energetic boundaries. I'd love to pivot just a tiny bit to talk about like what might a really healthy relationship with self and sense of self and return to self look like in this coming year?
It's ever moving, it's ever changing, and each day you get the opportunity to come back to yourself in a way that is either going to benefit you or is going to challenge you in a way to better yourself. And they're both bettering yourself. I feel like the majority of people are really, really hard on themselves. There's a real desire to be perfect. There's a real desire to not mess up. There's a real desire to not, say something, do something that's going to hurt somebody else. And in that exercise or in that way of moving through life, a lot of times we don't honor ourselves and we don't honor who we are. And when we can come to that neutral space of knowing this is how I feel today. I'm going to honor that. And if it feels I'm really tired today, you get to take a nap. You get to go slower. You don't have to push yourself to make sure that others are seeing you as productive. Because sometimes the most productive thing you can do is call in sick, is take a nap, is take an extra long lunch break. It's all of those things. So it's really honoring yourself in that way. Again, we know if you have a big presentation, like again, there's all the outliers of that, but not what I'm talking about here. It's really giving yourself the grace to see things differently. And that's a good mantra is I'm willing to see things differently. I'm willing to allow myself self-care and whatever that looks like.
I feel like it's coming full circle because it kind of brings us back to that idea of perception and how that impacts reality. And I will say, it might not be your imagination that someone is expecting you to work harder and always be on and deliver, deliver, deliver. But if you take a little bit of a step back, you start to realize what they're asking is so unrealistic
Mhm.
and not sustainable, that
Yeah.
really the only option is to start to cultivate some agency to be able to say, here's what I'm going to focus on that I know is going to move the needle. And all the other expectations, I'm going to have to excuse me, I'm going to have to just let slide. Or if that doesn't feel like comfortable language, you can come up with another way to say it, but just taking that agency back from all the people around us who want to put all these expectations on us. And sometimes we even just carry all these messages from when we were in school and maybe we had a really tough teacher or we had a really tough coach or something like that and they maybe thought that they were helping us achieve our potential, and they were actually filling our minds with all these things that years later can be echoing and telling us that we're never doing enough. And we need to learn to just understand, yeah, no, it was enough a while ago.
Yeah.
I contributed a lot. I did a good job, and I'm allowed to just take care of myself for a minute.
Yes.
And learning to do that regularly, like, that's how you break the burnout cycle. Otherwise, it just keeps repeating, and we gotta stop that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm not very scientific, but I'll do a little bit. Where our brain has two hemispheres, right hemisphere, left hemisphere. And like you're saying, like as children and as when you get to school grades, the focus really becomes on the left hemisphere of order. Here's how you're going to communicate in this world. Here is the skills in order to survive in this world in that way, in a very I don't want to say corporate way, but very organized way. I'll just say that. And this is how you succeed. And here's time, and here's how to tell time, and this is the time that we all have to live with on this 3D world. Totally need it. It's all stuff that we need. And it's these basic skill sets that we need that then get a little bit out of whack, where it's also where the ego lives on this hemisphere of the brain. And the ego, again, not all bad. It's how our personality is. It comes from that a lot of times. It's when it starts to get out of whack and out of balance. Whereas the right hemisphere of our brain is where the intuition lives. It's where our creativity lives. It's where our imagination lives. It's where our emotions live. It's where the sensitivity comes from. And a lot of us grew up in worlds where that was downplayed as you're too sensitive, as a way to weaponize that against sensitive people. And I don't know about you, but that's one of my greatest gifts is to be sensitive to somebody. And it doesn't mean that I take on their emotions. It just means that I'm compassionate and that I can understand. And so, when we are returning to our intuitive self, it's a balance of that. It's trying to turn online this right hemisphere of our brain that, again, what the sixth sense might have been introduced to us as something very scary, it's actually a sense that helps us be more efficient, more effective. It allows us to do the work in a way that is creative to how we are able to process, and it also doesn't need to be on somebody else's schedule. So when maybe an assignment comes, if you're working and there's something that needs to be done, when you can tap into that, it's like, okay, I know I'm going to be able to get this done at this hour of the day because this is when I work at my most creative. And again, depending on your situation at work, there's ways that this can be achieved. I did it for many, many years without having to fall into, the 9 to 5. This is what you get done. This is how you do it. When you can tap into this other sense, um, you can get the work done, but you can do it in a way that fills your soul and allows you to put your best presentation of it forward rather than just hammering it to fit into this organization.
It really is a great irony and a beautiful reality that the more we're able to find that flow, the better the end product is going to be anyway, without all of that banging your head against the wall that we were kind of trained to do to show we were busy.
Yeah, that's what you see. I mean, in my work, it was days would be filled of meetings,
Yeah.
just meetings, 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 meetings. And a lot of companies have said, okay, we're going to restrict this. We're going to put, 1 meeting on the calendar a day versus 7. But that's a direct result of every moment has to be filled in order to feel productive. Okay, I did it. I got through that day. I was productive, you know?
But you would spend all day in meetings and then have to go home and work on your actual deliverables and not
Exactly,
sustainable. Just
exactly.
for a human. Gotta remember we're human
Yeah,
and not make that a negative thing, you know?
yeah.
We were created with 2 halves of our brain for a reason. We need both. Both have a lot of value. It's just maybe the one you have to wait a little extra second to see how it contributes, but it contributes so much, and I wish like, my hope for the future is that we get better at recognizing that.
Yeah,
Can I
yeah,
ask you one more thing?
of course.
Can you
Anything.
maybe just share a little bit about how all of us can protect our energy? Like, again, you are just so good at energetic boundaries. And even if you want to share a little bit about, like, how did you come to that point? Because I imagine it was not innate, or maybe it was, maybe that is part of your intuitive gift, but anything you've learned along the way that really helps you hold those really solid energetic boundaries that allow you to do really good work and have thriving relationships and all these things without always taking on so much negative energy.
So it starts with what I had mentioned before, with knowing when you're in your most neutral state. A great practice of this is I'm about to walk into a meeting that I know is going to be challenging for me. Okay, I'm walking in, I feel a vibe. And we all know this when you've walked into a room and you're like, "Look, what just happened? What threshold did I just pass into now?" And it's being able to identify that. And what I'll do prior to even walking into the room is Sonia Choquette. She's in a brilliant, brilliant channel. She has some exercises on this, but basically, what it is she'll do this kind of clearing around her. And it's just an acknowledgement of this is my, I always like to say dirty dancing. This is my dance space. That's your dance space. This is my bubble. This is my area of which I am now walking into this room with. And the vibes are off here. That doesn't mean that I need to match that vibe. That just means that now my energy is focused on this kind of bubble where I can exist and I can speak And anything anybody else with again a lower vibration at the time, it doesn't mean that they're bad, it just means that they're at a different space right now. It can just kind of bounce off that. It's just kind of bouncing off that, and I can watch it almost like it's on a movie screen, where it's like, okay, I'm watching this movie, I'm in the audience, I'm not an actor in that movie, I'm not in it, but I can see it and I can participate. So that's one way of just saying, okay, now I see. Now I see the my emotion doesn't need to match that vibration. They're two totally different things. It doesn't mean that I need to be swallowed up into this pool of negativity. I can kind of float to the top and let the anchors kind of go down. Then, when I come out of that experience, if I'm able to, I go to water very quickly. I'll wash my hands. If I'm home, I can take a shower. If I'm by the beach, I'll take a walk down to the beach. It is just an energetic clearing. This is a super high tech way of doing it too, is you can take your scissors of your two hands and just kind of cut, almost sword off those energetic ties. And what that does is it's basically, again, we're all energy. Is it just it alerts almost it alerts your intuitive self, it alerts your higher vibration that nope, I'm done with that, I'm clean of that, I have completely closed the door of that, that is not affecting my being anymore. And if it does creep back into my head, instantly I can come back to the present and say, I'm here, that was in the past. I know what happened in there. Now, in the present, here's how I'm going to start to work and start to operate. It's a real way of coming back to yourself without having other people influence how you are moving through your day. Because a lot of times I would get stuck on that, where it's like that conversation just ruined my day. I don't know if anyone else has had that, experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
100%.
yeah. And what now I'll do is I'll come back and I'll say, okay, that conversation's over. What within me is keeping coming up. So then it's again, it's a severing of that energy, and then it's coming back because there might be something that your intuition is trying to tell you from that interaction. And when you can turn in and respond to it rather than react to it, that's the guidance that you're being given.
I love that because it's not about stuffing negative emotions or ignoring negative emotions. But it's not healthy to carry all of this energetic baggage from one thing to the next to the next. And sometimes it feels like we have all these heavy suitcases of just negative, energetic garbage that we're carrying around with us. And I love that image of just like cutting it off, like, and
Yeah.
not allowing it to keep living rent free in our heads.
Right. Because when you don't cut it off, it's almost like you're taking on that other person's like, and you start to ruminate of, well, why did they say that? And why it doesn't matter. You've cut that energy off. Now, why am I responding? Why am I responding? And that again is it just brings you that much closer to that sense that is trying to make life easier so that you can not wallow in it, so you can turn, pivot, and just go.
Yeah, like stay in our lane, really strong and full and wholehearted
Yeah.
and just clean and clear.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add before we land the plane?
I'm so appreciative of the time because I think like if anyone takes anything away from this, it's that our intuition is always available to us. It's always here. It's not, it's not something that we have to try really hard to find. It's just turning our awareness and knowing that it is as present as all of our other senses. Um, sometimes people will say something like, I smell a rat, like when something's not right. That is your intuition. But because we have been so trained for these five senses, we instantly shift it to, well, that's acceptable. When that's your intuition, that's your intuition. So it's the more that we can have these conversations, the more that that word doesn't scare people off, and the more people that are willing just to dive in a little bit more to develop that skill set, the better the world's going to be.
Oh my gosh, Jen, it's so good to learn from you. I feel so grateful to get to share you with my community and really appreciate you.